Members, it's already the appointed time and we've formed a quorum. May I call the meeting to order? Welcome to the Transport Panel meeting. Since the last meeting, 4 information papers have been issued. Please note them and items for discussion. At the next meeting, we have a list of outstanding items for discussion. The next meeting is proposed for the 21st of July, and there are some suggestions from the administration. First, it is the Hong Kong Macau Bridge, Hong Kong Management Office and manpower proposal. However, we have 2 very hot topics today, so we have decided to defer this to the next meeting. And there are already 3 suggestions for the next meeting. Progress of the review of roadworks safety requirements, legislative amendments to include 3 new toll-free tunnels, namely Central Wan Chai Bypass Tunnel, Longshan Tunnel, and Chung-hung Tunnel as government tunnels. So they have to brief us before they introduce legislative amendments. And 3, replacement of traffic control and surveillance system in Tsingma Control Area. There are 4 items for the next meeting. And because of that, we have to advance our meeting time to 9:30 a.m. That's my suggestion. Any problem with that? Mr. Lam Chuk-ting, Chairman. Members are very eager to speak in our meetings. Since there are so many items, why don't you make it even earlier? Is it okay if we start at 9 a.m.? No problem with me, but may I remind members that we need a big quorum. We have over 40 members in our panel, and we need more than 12 to make a quorum. I think you should have more confidence in members. Can we reschedule the meeting because I'll be out of town on the 21st? All right, let's advance it to a little bit more as suggested by a member, and I will ask around to see if we can form a quorum. It has to be either before the 16th or after the 24th. But 21st is the scheduled meeting time for July. So there is the suggestion to advance it to before 16th. Or after the 24th, otherwise I won't be able to make it. I'm just worried that after the 24th, more of us will be out of town because this session ends after the 21st. So we still have a few special meetings. A meeting was cancelled because of the typhoon, and it will have we have to make up for it in July. So we have got a few meetings scheduled for July anyway. But anyway, Mr. Yik, we note your request, and if we can form a quorum, we will proceed as scheduled. All right, is it okay if we start our meeting at 9 a.m. on the 21st? And may I remind you to be punctual, okay? Please invite the administration to join us. We have 2 items on our agenda, and first is the public transport strategy study. Time is rather tight. We have lunch scheduled for the 12:45, so this meeting cannot be extended. So if in the middle of this item, if we do not have new members, I will draw a line. So members who would like to speak, indicate your intention ASAP. Please invite the administration to join us. Will members please press the request to speak button. We have the secretary and also the commissioner and the deputy secretary. Can I give the floor to the administration for an introduction, please? Thank you. This term has carried out 2 major studies on traffic development, and that is the RDS 2014 announced in September 2014, and also the public transport strategy study we're going to introduce today. It started 2 years ago, and it focused on the roles and functions of various public transport services other than heavy rail, so that when our railway system is further expanded as recommended in the RDSDS, we can improve our system so that we can have balanced, sustainable development of public transport services. In 1999, there was the Comprehensive Transport Studies 3, and the current backgrounds and the current directions were set out in the CTS 3, and they are: 1. Better use of railway as the backbone of our passenger transport system. 2. Provision of better public transport services and facilities. 3. Wider use of advanced technologies in transport management. And D. Implementation of more environmentally friendly transport measures. We believe these broad directions still remain applicable now, but they have to be strengthened and enhanced. Our heavy rail is expeditious, efficient, and high speed, and environmentally friendly, and the public are concerned about the impact on our air quality because of public transport services. So our heavy railway will still be our backbone in public transport. However, the heavy rail accounts for around 37% of the passenger trips in Hong Kong. And then even when the RDS 2014 is fully implemented, it will still only account for about 30%. And we have to take care of areas not accessible by heavy rail in new development areas. Franchise buses will continue to account for 30% of our public transport services. And for light rail, PLB, non-franchised buses, taxis, ferries, and trams, they'll continue to play a supportive role to take care of the needs of different districts and passenger clusters. Public transport services have contributed in accordance to their roles and positioning, and we have established a traffic ecosystem. We have a diversity of public transport services, and different operators can complement one another, and there are also choices for passengers. And this is a crucial factor for our successful public transport system. In a 2014 international study, among 80-odd countries, cities, we rank number 14 in among these cities, and we have completed 8 topical studies covering franchise buses, taxis, and school buses and ferries, and we have explored how we can enhance the arrangement for the disabled. We have 23 recommendations, 20 of which are now implemented. For instance, we should have new bus interchange, new fare concessions for franchise buses, and to exempt the source requirement for non-franchise buses, and special facilities, supporting facilities for different operators. And so we don't wait until the whole study is over. We have 14 new measures to be announced, and we have to consult stakeholders and also the districts before implementation.
So the new measures including designated bus routes, increasing bus interchanges, and on a pilot basis, single-deck, mid-size single-deck buses, new long-haul franchise busing services, and other short, long-term measures. We're also going to have a study on the new heavy rail linking urban areas with the new territories northwest, As for public light buses and non-franchise buses, we would maintain the proportion of services and also enhance their operating environment. And we will increase public light buses seating from 16 to 19. That's the first time such policies introduced since 1988. As for point-to-point personalized public transport services, we've heard views that there should be the encouragement for sharing of services, and there's also new demand for taxi services. So in any for hire private vehicles, there should be licenses provided. And so the government adopts an open attitude towards for hire private vehicles. And at the same time, we would improve taxi services, first of all, bringing about 600 mini taxis, and also improve the service quality of 18,000 taxis so as to enhance the operating environment and enhance the interactions between the trade and other stakeholders. Franchise taxis would be run on the franchise. There won't be a permanent license so as to overcome the restraint on service quality under the current licensing scheme. As for the chances for other services like regulated internet cars, we would actually have further study into that, and we'll need to take into account the views of various stakeholders. At the same time, we are striving to create cycling and walking to create a green environment to provide convenience for the public going back and forth from office to home, and also public transport terminal. From this year onwards, we will launch the Walk in Hong Kong scheme to enhance the walkability of the entire city. And in new towns and newly developed areas, we will create a cycling-friendly environment, including improving current cycling tracks and also parking spaces and facilities for bicycles. We also enhance the publicity and public education on safe cycling. On June 14 and 15, during the electoral debate, we actually elaborated on that. All these measures would help reduce use of private vehicles and ease the road congestions and improve air quality, and that will be conducive to sustainable development. For barrier-free transport, we will urge all transport providers to promote barrier-free stations and also facilities for the disabled and people who are not good at walking. Chairman, after the release of the public transport study, we have heard views and also comments that we have not gone far enough or our proposals are not comprehensive enough. But let me say this. This study is intended to set the stage for future changes. We are still open to the views of various stakeholders and the community. But we do have a clear strategic direction. That is, we should give priority to public transport services. And we should base our transport system on the services that carry a large number of people. And we should also promote green choices and barrier-free transport services. Of course, public transport study should also tie in with our future development plan for the entire city. But of course, we do need to take into consideration the interests of various stakeholders in order to have a equal balance and also have proper balanced. We need to make choices. Strategically speaking, there's no way we can please everybody. On the employment of innovative technology and smart mobility, we admit that Hong Kong is lagging behind some other cities, so we need to catch up quickly. So we hope that the sector and the operators will work hard together with the Hong Kong government. Thank you. Okay, members with questions. Let me read out their names. Lin Ting, Michael Tan, KWOK, Lau Kwok Fan, Wen Shiu Kin, Claudia Mo, Frank Yik, Hon HUI Chi-fung, Chen Chi-chun, Chen Chung-ta, Luk Chung-hung, Wu Chi-wai, Yu Si-wing, Tan Meng-ho, Yu Chung-yim, Chen Chi-ying. Have I missed anyone? Because of a large number of members with questions, so each will have 3 minutes. Lam Chut-ting first. This is. Do you have 2 hours on this topic or item? Well, we have 1 hour 45 minutes for this item, but now 70 members have lined up to speak. So you need to reserve time for the administration to respond, and usually it will take up almost 4 minutes each time, because often you only give officials 5 seconds to answer. Well, I think this is too rushed. Well, 70 members means that it'll take up 6 to 8 minutes. We should have let's have 4 minutes. Okay, just keep the time tightly. Okay, I'll draw a line now. If each one of you want to have 4 minutes, okay, I'll draw a line now. Okay, 4 minutes for each members. I'll have to draw a line. If not, we won't have enough time today. Okay, you can draw a line. I also have motions to move today. Okay, let's go for the 3 minutes first. Lam Chut-ting. 3 minutes first. Lam Chut-ting. Chairman, looking at the government's paper, he will actually use heavy rail as the backbone of public transport. That's the principle. It is understandable because of the large population in Hong Kong. Rail does play an important role. But in recent months, we've seen that MTRC has, on the MTRC platforms, we have seen the occurrence of major incidents. And each time an incident happened, the service was delayed by 2 or even to 4 hours. Hundreds of thousands of passengers were affected. So I'd like the Secretary to think, besides rail transport, which is the backbone of our public transport system, how about franchise buses? I mean, the competitiveness of franchise buses is very important. We should not just help them, but we should really ensure that the franchise buses are really competitive, so that if there are any bias in our transport system, at least there is a balancing force. And Chairman, on the other hand, we've received from the transport trade, particularly from the non-franchise bus sector, they think that the current review is disadvantageous to them because many of them provide feeder services in housing estates, and they serve residents living in remote areas, and it also fill or vacuum in surface. So can you consider non-franchise buses and housing estate buses are very important too? Their services are important. So Chairman, can you ask the can we have a public hearing on this topic to invite various stakeholders to tell us their views? I hope to listen to the Secretary as well. What is his views now that we're going to have a new rail lines commissioned, making up to 40% of the passenger trip. So if the rail system age, would that actually undermine the competitiveness of other transport services? And with the result that if the rail system breaks down, then there will be total collapse of the entire public transport service? Secretary, I know whenever an incident happened, we are very concerned, and we would pay much attention to the situation, and MTRC's management was also very concerned. And we keep reminding the company about repairing and maintaining, upgrading their resources and to allocate resources. Each year they spend up to billions of dollars into their resources and upkeeping. But their reliability is up to 99.9%. But not like Mr. Lam said, we do not attach importance to franchise buses. Franchise buses are not just playing a supportive role. They are the backbone and main transport services in new areas, new development areas. For housing estate buses, historically speaking, these housing estate buses came up because of the inadequate service provided by franchise buses. Therefore, that's our positioning, and that's how we look at it in our study. Next one, Michael Tian. Chairman, Secretary, I know that you won't go to the meeting, but I like to praise you for your commitment and for having foresight and to have a new rail link linking Chung-hung with the urban areas. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to get on board the West Rail to get to the urban areas. So you do have foresight. But now I have to say something negative. There will be 3 motions today, and the first 2 I've mentioned them already. I think the government has no specific measures to encourage people to take public transport. So I asked that there should be parking facilities or bus-to-bus interchanges. And the KMCs should launch monthly pass, which do not cost more than $700. And you should also fine illegal parking. And also in busy areas, you should actually install CCTV to clamp down on illegal parking. And my second motion is on the light rail. That is, I urge the government within 5 years to 10 years to provide double carriage for light rail during peak hours. Now, the main points now, Secretary. As for bus fare adjustment mechanism, many people have told me that what they want to see most is that there should be a system linked to company profits, a real adjustable mechanism. That is, the price will not come down only in times of deflation, but where the company makes more profits, the price will come down. MTRCL's latest adjustment mechanism is one in which that there will be rebates because of their huge profits. So they're not cutting their fares. And the same for the EXCO approved package. Even if you reduce the ceiling for the rebate system, the bus would never, however, reduce their prices even when the price of oil comes down. So why can't the government unify the mechanism for buses and MTRCL so that buses can also have a price adjustment mechanism linked to the profits? So, Secretary, can you elaborate on that? I'll try to answer as much as I can.
Well, I will. First, the government encourages franchise buses to introduce monthly passes. As I said in a council meeting, we have to ensure that the coverage is wide enough, and introduction of monthly passes, the cost shouldn't be transferred to people not using monthly passes. And as for the fare adjustment mechanism of buses, the biggest difference between this and that for railway, there is a direct formula for MTR, and there are no other factors. So in the past few years, we have introduced factors outside the current mechanism. For instance, the medium household income of Hong Kong. And for buses, the fare arrangement is that it will consider the cost, and it is also subject to the approval by the Executive Council. This we know. So now, Mr. Michael Tian, please allow the Secretary to finish first. If it is a negative 2% or plus 2%, we'll see what can be done. I'm sorry, Mr. Michael Tian, please allow time for the Secretary to answer. You have overrun for more than 1 minute. I have to be fair to other members. You have been chairman yourself, you know. Secretary, can you please respond? Mr. Dennis Kwok, can I give 1 minute of my time to the Secretary to respond to Mr. Michael Tian's question? What about my visionary proposal that is this adjustment that can go upwards and downwards? So it's not pegged to oil prices. When they have made a huge profit, then there should be fair deduction. We have conducted a review of the fare adjustment arrangement. We're going to update some of the data. Further on, I'll come to this panel again specifically on that topic. Or I return the floor to Mr. Dennis Kwok. Thank you. You mentioned green transport in the paper, and in fact, bikes are the greenest form of transport. You say a few words about that in the beginning, but I don't think the administration has taken cycling seriously. There was a motion yesterday, and all parties agreed that cycling should be regarded as part of our daily mode of transport. But I do not see anything specific in this paper to tell us how we can enhance greatly the safety of cyclists. Like in Sweden, they have a Vision Zero policy, and that is to achieve zero accident every year. In Hong Kong, we have fatal accidents involving cyclists in Hong Kong. You talked about the policy to promote safe cycling. What specific measures do you have? Why aren't they found in this paper? Well, this is a public transport strategy study, so bikes are not it's not within the scope. For instance, commercial vehicles are not covered by this PTSS. That doesn't mean that as a matter of transport policy, we do not care for cycles. As said in the motion debate 2 days ago, the government is concerned that we have a bike-safe environment, but because of the busy traffic situation here, we are not in a position to encourage too much cycling. Of course, it depends on whether the society wants more such activities. Now, from what we have heard, members want more heavy rail services, more franchise buses, more PLBs, more taxis, and as said by Mr. KWOK, more bikes. Given our limited resources, we also have to take into account safety, and we see how we can further this. Well, you do not have anything specific. Since there are cyclists in Hong Kong, you have to protect their safety. This has got nothing to do with whether you have PLBs or other public transport services. You have to take care of their safety anyway. What measures do you have? Well, every year we have publicity on road safety covering not just vehicles, but bikes as well. Some people ask us to open up the urban roads for bikes, but because of safety concern, we dare not do so yet. Well, can we widen our roads to allow that? In the future, as I said at the motion debate, we will have to consider that later. I don't see any study here, although you call it a public transport strategy study. It's just a summary of what was done in the past few years. Only 14 out of the 70 odd recommendations are new. All of them, all the rest are old measures. Have you consulted different trades? PLBs are not happy, non-franchised buses are not happy, the commuters are not happy. So most people are not happy with the PTSS because they find it fragmented. You have segregated different modes of public transport in Hong Kong. You look at them separately, and the role of the government is sadly absent here. Now, heavy rail accounts for 37% of our passenger trips. In future, rise to 40%, and for franchise buses, it's about 30%. That means most people in Hong Kong are using road transport. And how do they complement one another? There is no mention of this. When our roads are busy, how can we make use of bus-only lanes to ensure smoother transport or traffic? But there are only suggestions regarding 2 roads. And introduction and the difficulties in recruiting drivers. Again, no measures. Can you lower tunnel tolls or standardize them? No mention of that. The only strategy is interchange. Whether it be light rail or buses, you talked about interchanges. But the problem with interchanges For light rail, have you considered that for Chung-hung station, it will burst to its seams if your proposal goes ahead? And for buses, you are using the mentality of heavy rail, and you are bound to fail, because for heavy rail, I just crossed the platform, and in a minute another train will arrive. But for buses, I have to wait for 10 minutes for the first bus, and then at the interchange, I wait for another 10 minutes. Take the North District as an example. From Fanning Highway to Kowloon, there is an interchange, but when I return from Shangshui to Fanning, there is no interchange. The interchange is only one direction. So what is the government's role in the PTSS? Will you seriously do another comprehensive transport strategy study? Please be brief. Now, for light rail, we are still consulting the local community, including the district councils concerned. Mr. Lau said that we've only got 14 new recommendations. Now, if I had known what Mr. Lau was about to say, I wouldn't have announced all the recommendations in the past few years. We wanted to be proactive. We wanted to launch measures when they were ready. Now we are criticized of having nothing new. Perhaps if I had known before that, I would have adopted an other approach. Now, the pie is only 100%. Now, if I allow more franchised buses, what about other public transport? The market share would, of course, drop for that. How do we achieve a balance? And these are things the government has to bear in mind in overall traffic planning. Now, for you are heavily biased towards the heavy rail, and for the remaining 40% of public transport services, you have ignored their needs. Ms. Andrew Wen. Now, Chairman, this is quite a big topic. Will you consider convening a public hearing for different stakeholders to come and tell us their views? Now, I'd like to talk about non-franchise buses and Uber, but Mr. Lam Chuk-ting has commented on the former, so I will focus on Uber. And according to the Secretary, we lag behind international trend when it comes to this. Whether it be the Bureau or the police, you have held on to the standard of whether it's legal or not, while the Secretary said that he maintains an open mind. I am baffled. How do you maintain an open mind in dealing with new modes of public transport? And now, if Uber were legal, you wouldn't have to tackle it. Now, in your very narrow context of regulation, Uber is illegal. So how can you ensure that there's room for such development? From time to time, we have criticisms that our law is rather dated, and there may be measures to relax the current regulation. In the past, PLBs had only 9 seats. Now it's 14 seats. You are trying to enhance the capacity. And in the 1990s, even IDD backhauling was against the law. So the law should be adapted in the light of changes in society. That is not for the benefit of a few group of people. Rather, if it is in the public interest to do so, then the government should act. And that is exactly why we have a government here. So even today, the reply from the Secretary is just like an ostrich. You sounded as if the door was open. In fact, it's closed. So will you really review the situation? Otherwise, from time to time, a dozen or so drivers would be prosecuted by the police. But you have to really tackle this from a policy perspective. I know the government, a new government is coming in, but even within your term, Secretary, can you suggest setting up a task force, an Departmental Working Group to review the current legislation. Mr. Wang mentioned a company. I don't want to mention it directly, but you have to remember that it is a global enterprise worth $70 billion. We will not cater for a particular company. We will ensure fairness. And you talk about the expanding capacity of PLBs. Yes, for PLBs, we have a cap on the number of PLBs in Hong Kong, and is enshrined in the legislation. We cannot allow a certain kind of public transport vehicles to grow uncontrolled. So we are technology neutral. We encourage a new mode, so that will apply for quality taxis. But it's government policy that we will not allow all vehicles to become non-franchised commercial vehicles without any control. Whether the law would be amended is something for the future. So we're not going to have a public hearing, Chairman, and we'll deal with that later. Ms. Claudia Mo, I have to criticize the government. It's just a report that you think is good. So you talked about this and that kind of public transport, and that's it. You have not dealt with, say, a car parking issue. You have been pulling down car parks and without replacements, and you are giving out more fixed penalty tickets. It's just a comment. Okay, you talked about trams. You talked about a discussion by the town planning board. In your report, you said that the positioning and role of trams remains the same. Trams, for sure, should continue to run in Hong Kong. And secondly, I have to criticize you for your attitude towards Uber, a new competitive force. I think you are only protecting the license fees of taxis. You don't want it to collapse. So the Environment Bureau, the INT Bureau will come over and make some noise from time to time. This afternoon, I will meet Uber. I am going to call Uber again. Will that driver be prosecuted as a result of my hire? And you have not made it clear whether it is against the law for people to operate Uber. And then franchise buses. Can we have a student concessions comprehensively? We've been talking about this for a long time. Can you give us a fixed timetable? For instance, can that be implemented early next year? So much for the time being. Secretary, I think Ms. Claudia Mo is talking about the renewal of KMB's franchise. KMB proposed some concessions for students back then, and Ms. Mo gave us some suggestions. So we've asked the KMB to review in half a year after its new concessions have been in place. And you mentioned another company, and I think I already expressed my views in response to Mr. Andrew Wang's question. For a taxi license, we do not have any obligation to ensure the prices of taxi licenses. New licenses will be issued whenever we see the need, and therefore we have issued 20 new lent-out taxi licenses. However, there are changes in this regard.
So there have been changes in people's behavior, and therefore we know that if we increase taxis services, then we will propose actual launching new services. Would you announce that Uber is illegal in Hong Kong? Chairman, any for hire services, if it's not got a license, then it's illegal. Okay, 40 members have yet to speak, but we only got an hour left on this item, so I have to draw a line now. Frank Yick. Thank you, Chairman. The study, after it's been announced, I've noticed that in various electronic media and media comments, on the whole, for academics who research into transport, said that there's not much good about this study. And I know, Secretary, you have your own views, but myself, I find that the content of the study, most of it, are proposals made by the sector. And the government has implemented some and going to implement others. And so you just actually put them all together. And in your latest paper on the increasing PLBs sitting from 16 to 19, the government's emphasized that you need to maintain the equal balance in the trade. But this latest study also has some new things. I think non-franchise bus companies have mentioned to you, that is your speed buses service. I know that's a suggestion by the Transport Department rather than being proposed by the bus sector. So that's similar to the non-franchise bus service now. If you adopt the concept of sharing resources, then you should open up the speed bus service to public competition. So you shouldn't be reserve it for bus companies. And also to bring in mid-sized buses in some areas is like contrary to what you've been doing. In the past, when the population was small, you have non-franchise buses. And if the population increases further, then you have bus and then regular bus and then rail services. And so does it contradict the 19 sitting PLB buses? You are trying to disturb the equal balance in the trade, however. And also, you also mentioned that you study more bus lines or bus routes. But I hope that they would not be designated bus routes, but at certain designated bus routes, turn them into public transport lines or service routes. In overseas, you can see examples where they call the certain designated routes public transport lines, not just exclusively for buses. Okay, I'm going to move a motion later on. Ultimately, I think that a government piecemeal study is not ideal. You've done this study now, and next time you say you want to study rail and other main routes study. In the last legislative term, I proposed CTS 4 to the government, but the government turned it down. And then I heard from many in the trade, academics and officials, they all think that the last study was done 18 years ago and said that you've been upgrading your model. But in fact, I do think that you should reconsider my idea for CTS 4. Secretary. Yes, Frank Yick's proposal that besides bus routes, whether it should be included, expanded to be public transport service routes. Well, I think we can explore that concept. That ties in with the concept of giving priority to public transport. As for our trial scheme of new franchise buses, I think this shows exactly that, as Mr. Chen just said, that the government's not playing any role. We do have a role to play. We need to discuss with the operators. Franchise buses have tried new services in the past, which were the result of discussion between the government and the trade, because the public want to see variety of bus services, particularly for lengthy distances. In the past, rationalization of bus routes happened, and as a result of that, some PLB were brought in to fill the gap. Kwun Chung next. Kwun Chung. Thank you, Chairman. The public transport strategic study, many colleagues have expressed their views. You said that public transport is the priority and the backbone of which is the rail service, and that policy will remain unchanged. Yesterday, when we discussed cycling, I mentioned that rail services in some of the routes actually are overloaded, particularly in peak hours, particularly like in the West Rail Line and Chinwan Line. So I don't know whether in the short term, what measures the government has to ease the overload on some routes, rail routes? And also, can you provide more, for example, shuttle buses or estate services, that is bus services? And in paragraph 9 of the paper, you mentioned that the transport sector says that they are short of manpower, and they hope that 3 years of private cars can be changed to 1 year. You've consulted the trade and you consulted the road safety committee. So what is your consideration think? What arrangements will there be on in relation to the idea? Secretary, I will ask the director or commissioner to answer the second question. Yes, overloading at rail services, we know that. That's why we have to increase the capacity and create new lines. But if in some areas problem remains unresolved, our choice must be franchise buses. We will not solve the problem by shuttle buses or bus serving particular estates. So non-franchise buses, including estate buses, were only there to provide supplementary service to designated groups only. Commissioner, please. For some commercial vehicles, their driving licenses, I think that the owners must have a 3-year driving license. For that proposal, we have consulted the trade and the road safety committee. Most responses are in support of a change of it, because this is what's stipulated in the law. On amending the law, we are doing some preparatory work. I think in the next legislative year, we should be able to submit the amendment bill for legislative scrutiny. Next one, Chen Chi-chun. Thank you, Chairman. In this latest study, it shows that in the future, in 2031, rail service will make up 40% of the load, and the share of the bus services will decline. That will be the trend. But you can see that every month, during peak hours, we've seen incidents of actually malfunctioning of the rail lines. On the typhoon day, the day when typhoon hit, on the Kwun-chung line, there was a signal malfunctioning. And also there were issues or incidents in Kwun-chung on Monday. There was a car accident in Kwun-chung Tunnel, Kwun-chung to Tilking Lane. There was malfunctioning of the service. So it's very chaotic. And quite a number of Chung-hung residents said that there should be ferry services linking Chung-hung with North Horn and Central. But in your study, ferry services, the services for that only cover 3 pages, for page 48 to 50, and there's no mention of increasing ferry routes. So would you study whether we should increase ferry services so that we don't have to rely alone on road transport, to particularly for Chung-hung residents, they then would have one more choice. And in paragraph 3.12 in the report, you said that with the Sha-Tin Central Link commissioning, the demand for other transport services would decline. But on page 7, you only show us a map showing the proportions, but no passenger trips. Can you tell me by 2021 what is the patronage of buses and projected patronage of MTR service? Do you think that because the public comparing bus and rail services, they choose to go for bus services alone, or is it because the government would reduce bus routes so that people would be forced to take the MTRC and rail services? Well, I think for Mr. Chen, your second question, we have the figures, but we can only provide them to you after the meeting. And our consultants have also carried out some tests and have got results. But ultimately, we believe that whatever public transport, ultimately something for the public to vote with their feet. As for ferry services, outlying islands and also non-outlying island services are different. So for people going across the harbor alone, they are to take people from Hong Kong Island to Kowloon and so forth. So Commissioner can supplement. Okay, whether it's outline to outline island or just cross the harbor, if the operators are interested in opening new routes, we are very happy to listen to them. Let me give you an example. Even for going to outline islands, the same applies for crossing the harbor. More than a year ago, there's an application for services from Aberdeen to Chung-hung, a new route. We handled that, and the service has been commissioned. So if there's any operator who sees potential in a particular service, we are very happy to accommodate it. But for Kwun-chung, let me supplement. We have allocated lots of resources into expanding the road network. Therefore, the Lam Tin Tunnel is under construction, and by 2020, around 2020, it will be commissioned. By then, road transport or links to Chung-hung will be greatly improved. Next one, Chen Chung-tai. I'm concerned about the provision for New Territories West with increased population there. In your study on bus interchange, there should be some rationale behind your ideas. So I think you need to elaborate more on your rationale behind the bus interchange and services on a regional basis. And also for bus interchange in your report, it emphasized that conceptually speaking, can you tell the public more, particularly for residents in New Territories West, how can the bus interchanges, particularly for Tuen Mun Road, how can they improve bus services? Commissioner, please. Tuen Mun Highway, the bus interchange there, ever since it's been commissioned, it has shown that it's very effective, and the community accepts the bus interchange service. Same for the Thailand portal. But to create such big bus interchange, you need to consider the geographical constraints. We want to find more sites to build that, but not many locations are appropriate. The Tuen Mun, the interchange in Tuen Mun, people want us to expand that to increase the bus routes there. We'll consider it. In Thailand, if we can incorporate more bus routes there, that will also be a way to optimize the service. But for New Territories West, whether we can increase interchanges there, so far we haven't found any appropriate location. If we can find one, we will definitely consider it. And for the Route 11 study that has just begun, we'll see whether we can create interchange there. We will, in the course of the study, or when we do the detailed design, if it's feasible, we will see and try to get it done. Okay, please give us a clearer view. Indeed, the demand is that if the bus interchange plays such an important role in public transport, then in your study on BBIs, you should actually create an independent study on that. For example, you mentioned the Tuen Mun Highway, the interchange there which is accepted by the public. But in the Tuen Mun Highway, I don't really agree with the point, because if you don't have autobus, you can't use that route. At 11 p.m., at night, if you don't have autobus, you can't go home without that, and it's difficult for people to cross the road there.
And if you use the subway, you have to take 20 minutes. And what if, because of certain accident, you are stuck at the interchange? If you are hungry, you need to use the washroom. There are no facilities at all. So I think your study should not just consider the traffic routes. Yes, we're trying to improve the facilities at interchanges, bus interchanges. Very soon, the Tuen Mun bus interchange will have a service station like Thailand. There can be you can add value to your octopus. There will be washroom facilities, and there will be refreshment kiosks. So I hope in the very near future this can be implemented. Mr. Wu Chi-wai? Thank you. I have two more points to comment on this report. First, in Chapter 4, Under franchised buses, the administration talked about the need for new service demand, such as point-to-point service and also seating-only facilities or buses, seat-only service. Now, for these services, I think they are similar to non-franchised buses offered by resident services and new point-to-point services. I think this should be a measure to enhance competition. Rather, we should not favor franchised buses because they have the franchise, because this is going to affect the equal system. Because in a franchise arrangement, you allow cross-subsidy so that there can be more reasonable operation. This is different from handing out goodies to a particular operator. So if indeed there are such new arrangements, I think franchised buses and non-franchised buses should be allowed to introduce similar new services along the same routes to promote competition. And as for more bus interchanges, well, in general, we support bus interchange, but when it comes to the implementation details, we'll say that transport interchange there takes a longer journey time. So it's not just about setting up more bus interchanges, but improving the bus service network. For instance, when you want to encourage interchange, you must have the concept of trunk route service. For instance, all buses stop here and they can then switch to buses that run along Nathan Road so that interchange can be speedy and people can have seats and services are convenient. I hope this can be included in your study. Thank you. Second part about interchange. Yes, we agree with Mr. Wu that we should not just provide hardware in terms of bus interchange, and there are other supporting measures as well, but I just don't have enough time to talk about this today. And for franchise buses, franchise buses are the big carriers on our roads, and therefore we have franchise buses, and that's the reason why the franchise is not open to all. People have comments on the services, the fleet, and also the routes of franchise buses. But for resident service, it doesn't provide point-to-point service. And for franchise buses, they still have stops along the route, but for non-franchised buses, they cannot do that. It's entirely a point-to-point service, and the two markets are entirely segregated. Mr. Yu Si-wing, please reach out the mic for Mr. Yu Si-wing. Thank you. We had 57 million visitors to Hong Kong last year, and according to projection, there will be continual growth in the number of visitors to Hong Kong. And according to the administration, have you really studied the impact on the demand for public transport from growth of visitors to Hong Kong? And for franchised or for big buses, we do not have enough supply. The medium-sized buses or coaches, Usually, medium sized licenses can operate big coaches as well. So many charter service cannot find buses with a dozen or so seats. There is simply no supply, so they have to use a coach, and that would affect our road service. If we use a coach with a seating capacity of over 40 to carry a dozen or so passengers, this is not economical. So will you consider increasing the seating capacity of limousines to say 12 so that you can have supply to meet this demand? And increasing parking spaces for coaches near tourist spots. How do you define tourist spots? It's not just Disneyland or Ocean Park. Some tour groups visit residential areas as well. There are many coaches parked at residential developments. So will you conduct a thematic study on the supply of parking spaces for coaches? Commissioner, Mr. Yu asked whether we can have a new model of non-franchised buses. We have not fixed we have not a quota on the size of non-franchised buses. It is up to the operator to decide what model to procure. But for NFBs, we have a sourcing requirement. If it is a new license, it has to source an old vehicle in the market because, as said by Mr. Yu, NFBs are not fully utilized, and we do not want more new vehicles causing congestion on the road. And the industry accepts this sourcing requirement. Without reducing the number of large MFBs, we want more smaller size NFBs. There will be more licenses, more service licenses. That means we will have to relax the sourcing requirement. And this contradicts the sourcing requirement welcomed by the industry. So there are about 7,000 odd NFBs not fully utilized. The industry can reconsider the distribution or the distribution of the sizes of different NFBs. Mr. Jeremy Tam. All right, the report contains recommendations or measures, but there are no indicators. For instance, in the medium and long term, do you want to reduce traffic congestion, and do you want to increase the number of passenger trips to a certain target, and can you also use air quality at roadside monitoring stations to achieve a certain standard? Well, these are indicators, but they are not found in the study. Regarding public transport interchange arrangements, you have not proposed a solution here. By providing an interchange, the problem is not resolved. For instance, you have a ferry pier. You cannot, you just can't ask people to come and apply for a license. The question is how you can switch to another mode of transport across the harbor. Can you have, say, covered walkway for people to travel to another station to take public transport? And for bikes, you encourage people to use bikes. Will you have parking area for bikes for interchange to public transport, or will you allow people to take their bikes to onto the new public transport service, you do not have any comprehensive policy here. This is a public transport study, but how do different modes of public transport interface? For instance, you do not have large car parks near some railway stations. And as for the problem of vehicles for hire, now you have fixed the service licenses at 1,500. But you've only issued 650. That means many of the licenses are not yet issued. And for sharing economy and car pools, there is great demand from the community. Why is there nothing in this report on how we can deal with the hiring of private cars to resolve this problem? Now, this is a PTSS report, and therefore we do not have a chapter on bikes, and we don't have a chapter on park and ride at PTIs. By the same token, vehicles for hire is not a kind of public transport, although we have talked about point-to-point services. It's true that we have not fully utilized the quota. If anyone is interested in using this mode to provide more expeditious services, we are entirely open-minded, and we like to consider it using our established policies. Well, this is exactly your problem. You don't have anything to support hire car permits. Mr. Leung Chi-chung. Some members said that the PTSS has lumped everything together. I agree to this description, but it is proper to adopt this approach because we can only look at the overall traffic arrangements of Hong Kong using this approach. Because of demographic changes and changes in demand for public transport, you have carried out this study. And this report has devoted a lot of passage to transport changes in the North District. And for other areas, there aren't too many new things, but it's better than nothing. I welcome your future vision for the heavy rail. I support your conclusion for the future development of the heavy rail. You have to address the need from ever-increasing population in Tuen Mun, Wai-keung, and Yunnan and the area. Now, if you do not have proper infrastructure, people will protest strongly even before we reach 2031. I fully support your further expansion of our heavy rail in the North District. This may be something old, but you are going to enhance the remote ferry piers. Although the patronage may be low, but there are a lot of problems. Many passengers have issues with that. And I think it's good that you're going to renovate existing ferry piers.
Good.
And I think on the railway services in Northwest New Territories and the route rationalization for West Rail, I feel that there's been much voices of discontent from public. For example, the cancellation of some routes which do not take people to the ferries, and elderly people find it hard to get on board the light rail at Chung-hung station. All these issues need to be dealt with, and if you actually want to resolve the problems, you need to provide more data so district councillors will understand how useful the improvement measures will be. So, I mean, you'll be wasting your energy if you don't actually have fruitful discussions. Yes, for light rail, we do think that it should be kept, but we need to increase its capacity. Therefore, we're proposing short, medium, long-term measures to improve the situation. And as mentioned in the study, whether we can really implement all the measures, what does the public think of them, we still need to get the views from the residents first. Hopefully, we can really come up with arrangements that are satisfactory to the people. And for the new tourist northwest, there needs to be improved linkage to urban areas, and we'll consider whether there's a need for a new rail line. And that will be considered in the light of the 2030 study. So far, I've received 7 motions. 6 motions received now. So please be reminded, members, if you have any ad hoc motions, please give them to us ASAP because we need to make copies of them and distribute to members. Next one, Edward Yu. Sorry, excuse me, I thought you have much to say. An important question. Let's review for big cities around the world. Once they have opened up transport or make public transport data freely available, then people will be encouraged to take public transport more. The problem now is that people don't know what is the most efficient way, what transport mode to take. So it's been proven that if you publicize transport data, that can really ease the load on the public transport system and encourage more efficient use of public transport. In Hong Kong, I know that things have been developed at different stages. But for buses on Hong Kong Island, we don't have such real-time data. We don't know when a bus will arrive. And even so, even if KMB has such real-time provision of data, the data are not really totally available because no private app developers can create apps that can allow the public to have a good grasp of the best choices, in relation to which means of transport to take. So when would you implement provision of open transport data for all modes of public transport, and when will all these data be made available to private app developers? Secretary, I think on this issue, on Wednesday in our electrical full meeting, when we discussed the KMB franchise, the same question was asked about opening up transport data. I've explained that because the bus operators right now on their data, well, some of the data, operational data, have to be submitted to the Transport Commission Department. Therefore, they are available. But there are also concerns about property rights of some data. That's the key issue. But I agree with Professor Yu that if the public transport data are more open to the public, and that would really help the public plan their trips on a daily basis and encourage more efficient use of public transport. Even now, the 90% of public transport patronage in Hong Kong is very high on a worldwide basis. Secretary, but we're talking about their franchised public transport. Being franchised, that means that they need to, or they are given special subsidy to the extent of actually having monopoly. So when you approve their franchise, you can incorporate a condition asking them to open up their data. Commissioner, please. Please be brief. On Mr. Yu's first point, on the bus data, based on the requirement of the franchise, by 2018, they will need to provide real-time display of transport information when the next bus will arrive. And within the franchise, whether we can incorporate the condition you mentioned, we are still studying it because according to the law, franchise requires bus services to provide its service. If in the course of service they need to provide information to passengers, and if they've done, for example, like the real-time information display, and whether information over which they own intellectual property rights, whether they should open them up, we are considering the possibility. But we understand your demand, and we will look at how we can, achieve the goal. Members, please keep quiet when the administration is responding. Helena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I think this report itself omits something very important. That is on the public parking lots and public parking spaces, commercial and non-commercial. The whole report has not looked deeply into this area. So the government's policy is that, like in Kowloon West, Middle Road, the car park is gone. You might take public park because you want to build the Central Kowloon route. You're going to demolish all these car parks. So your policy is to demolish many car parks and creating very few car parking spaces on the streets. But that actually increases the issue of illegal parking on the streets and worsening road congestion. So I don't know why you've omitted this area. So I know another panel will deal with this matter. So Secretary, you don't have to answer me here. But on the ferry surface, just as someone asked it, on the ferry surfaces, you can see that in the entire report, you project that over the next decades, your policy, your positioning will remain unchanged. That is, you expect the patronage will be 1%. But the government, if you don't develop the cross-harbour ferry services, I mean, there's much potential for development of cross-harbour ferry services, and yet many piers are lying vacant, unused. So I'd like to ask the Secretary, how many piers now are serving services now? Do you know? Secretary, in the past there were some routes that were stopped because the operators did not have enough passengers. Where did the passengers go? Because they used other kinds of public transport. So as I just explained to other members, our passengers, our public, voted with their feet. I don't agree, Chairman. I don't agree. For any particular mode of transport, if it cannot develop, there must be reasons behind. It has not developed because you have not provided them with support. And all your support, like for outlying island services, or, well, for outlying islands, because ferry could be the only source of transport lane, so you have to give them more support, like in terms of oil, for example. But for cross-harbour services, you are not providing them enough support to help them operate with profits. So have you reviewed your current policy? That is, all your indirect support has not been enough to help them develop. So the question is, how come you can't consider further? There's no problem relying on the rail services. But for ferries, since it's an option, but if you don't develop it, then it won't be a choice at all because the routes are gone. So my proposal is, can you develop piers, revitalize piers, and provide more incentives so that more ferry routes could be developed and providing people with a real choice? Secretary, if a route is profitable, then the pier would provide the necessary backup. Thank you. Next one. Based on the report, by 2016, by 2011, public transport service will see an increase of 4.6% in demand, and in 2021 to 2031 it will be rise by 5%. But by your population projection to 2064, 7.4%, and 24 to 34, 3.3% in population growth. So I can see that your public transport projection has a gap with the population increase. People age over 65 by 2014 to 2024 will rise from 1.4 million to 1.7 million. 63%, 2024 to 2034, rise from 1.7 million to $2.28 million, 34% increase. So elderly people may not find seats on rail lines, but elderly people would enjoy, taking bus journeys because it's like an entertainment for them. They can enjoy the ride more, particularly with a $2 concession. So now with the big increase in the aged population, you are saying that projecting that the demand for bus services will decline. I think you should change the bus services to transition it into services more catering to elderly people who don't want to, join the huge queues during peak hours. So would you consider in non-peak hours launch long journey bus services that is only offered during non-peak hours so that all elderly people can enjoy the lengthy rides with seats? If you increase the fare to $4, they will still be willing to take the rides. So have you considered the factor of the fast aging population? If not, would you reconsider aging population in your revised study? Commissioner, please. Chairman, in many bus routes now, particularly those who go to long distances during the non-peak hours, they do have seats. They do have seats available now. So for elderly people, they know that it's not a problem finding a seat on the lengthy or long journeys. Bus go to distant places. And as for bus facilities that are tailor-made for elderly people, we know that. We are aware of the importance of that. In our discussion with bus companies on their franchises, we've asked the bus companies to create more facilities like handrails or with clearly marked lines on the steps or more alarm bells on the buses so that elderly people can find their rides more convenient. So we have considered all those factors. And as for other modes of transport, like taxis, we know that there'll be more and more taxis that can accommodate wheelchair-bound people. So this is a way to accommodate the aging population. Next one, Avenue. Chairman, on Jeremy Tam's point on the permit for hire taxis. Now you have a quota of 1,500. Only 500 have been used. Now that means there's much room for further development. What's the reason? Has the Bureau considered, is it because of your conditions which may be outdated, or the conditions concerned cannot foster the new economy mode of co-sharing, which is increasingly accepted now, actually. So would the Bureau consider revamping the relevant clauses so that if there's room for reform, I'm sure there are more enterprises. We don't have to name particular company. I'm sure there are enterprises who can join the sector and compete among themselves. So would you consider reform and increase the number of permits issued to meet the needs out there? And also for international city like Hong Kong, we can have more of a co-sharing economy.
Indeed. Hire car permits on the quota of hire car permits are not fully taken up, and there is room for us to allow more hire cars. But of course, we will have to vet the capability of new applicants. The vetting is to ensure that there is such a need, and then the applicant has the ability to provide the appropriate service required. In the past year, the Transport Department has been reviewing the vetting criteria or procedures for hire car permits. Perhaps the Commissioner can supplement the requirements and procedures for hire car permits. We did a survey last year, and the outcome was implemented early this year, and the industry welcomes that. Just to quote one example, in the past, the licensee has to own the car himself. That means in the past he had to buy a vehicle first before he came to he submit an application, but his application might not be approved and his investment might go down the drains. And this is a deterrent for people to apply. So we have new arrangement. People can give us all the information before buying a vehicle. Sorry for interrupting the Commissioner. Time is limited. I don't want to overrun. All right. Yes, such information is available elsewhere. In the long term, I hope you will not just discuss with the industry, because that would be a form of protectionism. We have to be open-minded before we can catch up with new developments. Yes, we have a sector. It's just like for other modes of public transport. Our review intends to facilitate new market entrance for the hire car permits, and this is the purpose of our review. Mrs. Regina Ip. I also like to talk about the issues of taxis and Uber. I think the Secretary knows that although many drivers have been prosecuted, there are still a lot of people using their service, even though the fees are much higher, and many people or young people and tourists would rather use Uber because they think the service is better. And for taxis, the vehicle is old and the drivers are rude, and they also like to refuse hire at Lan Kwai Fong. The drivers claimed that the experts were usually drunk, and so many people have no choice but to call Uber. Emperor 8.15 said that you would continue to improve to discuss with taxi drivers to improve their quality of service. How can you ensure that this will happen? Because people have been forced to use Uber. There aren't enough taxis. They cannot hire a taxi when it's rainy, when it's at the airport, during lunchtimes and so forth. Now, quality taxis, we tread very carefully because we understand that there are bound to be controversies in the industry. Now we understand that there was a motion with no binding effect passed. That we know that there is support in the community as well as among this council for quality taxis. So we have already for implementing personal quality franchised taxis. So I've heard Mrs. Regina Ip's motion, our view, so we hope we can introduce new services. Well, to be fair, I think there are two sides to a coin. Taxi owners are saying that the taxi licenses are very expensive, a few $1 million. When you buy a taxi license, it's like buying a flat, and it's an investment too. And they're saying that if you issue new taxi licenses, then the value of their licenses will be affected, because this government behavior will affect private property. As I said, there is no policy for the government to ensure that taxi licenses stand at a certain value. Even for property transactions, it's not the government's policy to ensure property prices. We understand that the trade has its concerns, and therefore we must duly consult them, and we have to balance the views of different sectors. We have 600 new franchised taxi license, and this accounts for a very small percentage of the total taxi fleet in the market. I think this will not affect the operation of the 18,000 taxis on the road. When I heard the data, I was so angry because you only rehash old answers to our questions. Point to point, public transport, 5.5 pages. You have never studied this global trend of sharing economy. You still talk about the 600 franchise buses. People talked about co-sharing, sharing economy. You talked about franchises. People, you said Uber is illegal. You are not willing to consult public. You ask us to relax the market requirements for hire car permits, and you turn a deaf ear to that. In 2016, I arranged a meeting with the administration to talk about a sharing economy. You refused to meet Uber. And on the 9th of November, we had local and overseas main operators hoping to meet you. And then the report is now published just the same. You still are prosecuting Uber, and you have refused to discuss with them. And this report is heavily biased towards the franchise taxis and their industries. Now, let's not talk about innovation. You have got nothing to do with innovation. Even for introduction of competition, you have refused to introduce competition. I wanted to discuss with the administration for a long time, and you have stalled for 2.5 years. You talked about not guaranteeing the value of taxi licenses. Well, even by taking no action, the licenses are very expensive. It's just like property prices. When they are soaring, you did something because your policies in effect protecting their high license prices. Even 10 years ago, when I was at the Traffic Advisory Committee, I already pointed out this. So many years have elapsed. What have you done? Now they have sharing economy options, and you banned them. What have you done? Because consumers want choices. They are the most important party. You should not protect those holding licenses that are worth millions of dollars. All right, when can you open up the market and allow sharing? There all countries or many jurisdictions allow that, with the exception of few. So where do we stand? Do you want us to fall behind in terms of innovation? We are already at the 16th position. Well, Mr. Mok really likes sharing economy. No, it's not that I like it, but this is the demand of the community. I'll try to be mild as far as possible. The public wants efficient and convenient service. So this 600 franchise taxes will be introduced to address the demand of the community. There are different views in the community. Now, in this panel, may I refer members to look at the 5 motions. The views reflected are very complicated and not as simple as understood by Mr. Mok. Well, if you provide hire for a fee, you must have a permit. I know this is very complicated. I'm asking whether you are going to conduct a public consultation or not. Please give a direct answer. Please allow the secretary to reply. I have no more response. All right, it's my time. Excuse me, members, can you please silence, please. Now it's my turn. For a PTSS, the most important thing is the ecology. I don't think that this PTSS report will allow our transport ecology to improve. Now, for point-to-point resident service, usually they're operated by non-franchised buses, and this is part of the transport ecology. Some non-franchised buses would offer express routes. Now you've added that into your report. So you're saying that express routes operated by non-franchised buses will change in the future as a matter of policy. Paragraph 4.27 of the report. It's about the when the NFA is over 9.7, then there would be a clawback to the public. Yeah, this sounds wonderful, but I think it's not really practical. Yes, when we talked about introduction of monthly passes, you say that the cost might be transferred to those not using monthly passes. We've always asked for student concessions and monthly passes. Why don't you fight for that? Now you talked about NFA reaching 9.7%, whether it be 9.3%, 9.0%. That is too far away. The most practical or the easiest target is to provide student concessions and monthly passes. So can you try to do this? You talked about non-franchise buses. I'll invite the Commissioner to respond later. For monthly passes by franchise buses, we encourage that, but we have reminded franchised bus companies not to just offer it in one or two routes. The coverage should be wider. And secondly, and please do not increase the fares for routes not providing monthly passes as a result. And the two bus companies are still studying that, and we are waiting for a proposal. Commissioner, I think the scope of non-franchise buses is very clear. On resident service, point-to-point services, there will be no change. For franchise buses, they run on routes. Even for new kind of services, we are not talking about point-to-point service. Within a certain district, there will be several stops before a bus rides on the highway. And for new services, there will be more facilities and seat-only arrangement. For residence services, we only approve point-to-point service or from one point to a traffic notes for interchange. Over 60% of the residence services are short-haul feeder services. Before 2004, there was some 51 or 16% out of the 300 odd routes that are cross-harbour services, but we have not approved any more such routes. Usually it's feeder service to the nearest transport node, and this is a better way of utilizing road resources, and this policy will not change. So for profitable routes, you don't allow NFBs to operate. I have received 8 motions. We don't have a quorum. Do we have a quorum? All right. We'll now deal with the motions one by one. First, from Mr. Michael Tian, you have 2. Can you please read out your motion? You may refer to the screen. To reduce the number of private vehicles during peak hours so that roads can be smoother. We should encourage people to use public transport. We urge the administration to first, in the existing and 6 new bus interchanges, there should be park and ride facilities to address the recommendation by TAC's study done in 2014 to address traffic congestion. Second, to amend the law ASAP so that CCTV can be used as evidence to prosecute illegal parking. 3, to ask the KMB to introduce territory-wide monthly passes worth at no more than $700. For those in favor, hands up, please.
反對嘅請數一數先。
Those who oppose, please count in hands. 11. Those who oppose, please raise your hands. No objection, abstention. 2 abstention. So motion is endorsed. Next one, Michael Tian. Because the New Territories Northwest, Hon HUI Chi-fung, Yunnan South, and Campton South, there will be new development towns set up with new population of $400,000. There's a big need for enhanced light rail service. We urge the administration to, within 5 years, carry out road improvement works at 11 sections to implement light rail, double carriage service, and during busy hours. Those who are in favor, please raise your hands. 12. 13. Those who are in favor. Those who oppose. None. Abstention. 1. So the motion is endorsed. Jeremy Tam, next. 4 motions. Jeremy Ho, Tam. We urge the administration to, on the public transport strategy study, lay out key effectiveness indicators and short, medium, long-term goals, and not restricted, including but not restricted to the average vehicle speed in congested roads, pollution level at roadsides, and also mileage accumulated, and also the proportion of electric vehicles of all vehicles on the road. Those and report back to the committee periodically. Okay, those in favor? 12 in favor, 13 in favor. Those who oppose? Abstention, please raise your hands. Motion is endorsed. Jeremy Tam, next one. The latest public transport strategy study neglects cycling. The committee urges the government, current walkability planning team, set up a cycling planning team to lay out all the planning and vision and strategy for popularizing cycling, review the current effectiveness of planning for cycling, and also lay down and implement measures to promote cycling, and also interchanges with other modes of public transport, so as to enhance the proportion of cycling in all kinds of transportation modes. Members in favor, please raise your hands. 14. Those who oppose? Abstention? None. Okay, motion is endorsed. Jeremy Tam, your next one. The current public transport strategy study lacks long-term vision and blueprint, and neither has it addressed any key dilemmas like road congestions and excessive number of vehicles. And the third comprehensive transport study, done in 1999, only look at the picture till 2016. So our committee urges the government to begin the 4th public transport study, and also make reference to the Vancouver Metropolitan Vancouver Transport 2040 plan to lay down the proportion of cycling in the coefficient of public transport, and also come up with a feasible low carbon mileage plan. And for the next 15 years of transport, lay down a long-term vision and blueprint. Okay, those in favor, 13. Those opposed? None. Abstention? 1. So motion is endorsed. Charles Mock and Yu Si-wing. Sorry, Jeremy Tam, you have the last motion. Please read it out. The latest study and all the topical studies lack paying attention to scrutinizing road safety. The committee urges the government to lay down long-term goals and strategy for safety performance, and also make reference to Sweden, UK, US, Canada, etc. Their measures to implement Vision Zero, paying or placing the highest value on road safety and public health, so that there will not be any compromise for the sake of transport efficiency and construction costs. We need to reduce the number of fatalities and injuries in traffic accidents to 0. Those in favor, please raise your hand. 13. Those who oppose? Abstention? 1. So motion is endorsed. Charles Mock and Yu Si-wing have moved their motions, but because we couldn't make copies of them yet, so I'll project them onto the screen. Charles Mock, please read out your motion. Chairman, let me find it first. Okay. The committee urges the government to study laying down the internet hailing service and car registration system and consult the public on the idea. Those in favor? 9. Objection? 1. Abstention? 2. Abstention? 2. Objection and abstention? 2. Okay, so the motion is endorsed. Yu Si-wing, your motion, please. Can you read it out? Because of the increase in the number of individual visitors from China and commercial visitors, and there's no supply of 10-seating luxury coach, and these small number of passengers are forced to use large travel coaches, adding to the road burdens. We urge the government to relax its restrictions on maximum number of seating and raise it to 12 for commercial luxury coaches. Those who are in favor? 8. Wai-keung? 7. Those who oppose? Those who oppose, please raise your hands. None. Abstention? 6. So motion is passed. Because during the meeting, members suggested there should be a hearing, we would ask the secretary to arrange for that. Okay, the secretary will arrange for that and let you know the latest decision arrangement. We need to find a time slot for that, so we'll let you know once that's been decided. And also today is if there are no other meetings held, this would be the last time the secretaries attends our transport panel meeting. So we'd like to thank the secretary for all his support all along for the transport panel. Well, I think at the meetings often I could not really fully address the questions raised by members, but please understand sometimes, public transport involves, a lot of views and issues. Thank you. So that's it for the item. So the next item is strategic studies on railways and major roads beyond 2030. So may I invite the administration to come in. Members with questions, you can raise your hands to let us know. Because of our time, and we have actually overrun a few minutes, so we need to keep really the time. Maybe Mr. Yao, the Undersecretary, can take us through the paper. Yeah, the Development Bureau and the Planning Department jointly commissioned the planning study Hong Kong 2030 Plus towards a planning vision strategy transcending 2030, in short form Hong Kong 2030 Plus in 2015, to formulate a robust spatial planning framework by adopting a visionary, pragmatic, and action-oriented approach to guide the planning, land, and infrastructure development, construction, and the shaping of the natural environment of Hong Kong. By then, because of the study, we on the Hong Kong 2030 Plus, we have a strategic study on railways to review by 2030 first and beyond the demand for transport support and the need for transport networks, so as to fulfill the proposed two strategic growth areas beyond 2030. At the same time, it can review the transport flow on various corridors. And this study covers railways and main roadways. On the railway section, we're going to carry out study that is under two scenarios. One is without the two growth development areas, and we would use existing data to review from 2031 and 2040 the performance of the rail networks, looking at the projection for passenger demand, patronage, and the performance of various rail networks and the feasibility for various services and the proposal of new railway routes. Another scenario is that we will look at the East Lantau Metropolis and Northeast North, the development needs in those areas. We'll carry out strategic study to project future patronage and also to analyze the performance of railway nets for the two growth areas, and also to find out the alignment, railway road alignment and associated infrastructures by conducting preliminary engineering technical review. The scope of study would be dependent on the planning data or information for the 2030 plus planning study for the two growth areas. For the major roads section, we will, based on the two scenarios, that is without the strategic growth areas and with the two strategic growth areas, you carry out corresponding study. For the major road section, we explore improvements to the West Rail Line. That will be a main aspect of the review based on planning department's latest study. From 2031, New Tourist Northwest population will have marked increase as compared to now. So by 2041, based on the data for them, for New Tourist Northwest, for the heavy rail service beyond 2031, we'll study the patronage then, and also projected patronage. We'll do an assessment and see whether there's a need to build a new heavy rail to link New Tourist Northwest with the urban areas. Because transport infrastructures are complex and huge in nature, so based on the past experience from the planning, investigation, detailed design to construction, the whole process would take more than a decade. In order to make sure that large-scale infrastructure development can meet with our development plans, we need to, for 2030 beyond, speed up a visionary and strategic study. We will listen to the panel on your view for the funding proposal associated with the plan. Thank you. Under Secretary, let me remind members that if you think it's necessary, you should, based on rules 33A and 64, declare any direct or indirect pecuniary interests in relation to this topic. So before we let members speak, let me read out the lineup. Nick Chiming, Chung-hung, Lau Kok-fan, Michael Tian, Kwok Ki, Chen Chi-chun. Who else? Kwon Chun-yu. Kwok Ki, please go back to your original seat because we have to take a vote. Then.
跟住呢
And Mr. Roy Kwong, Mr. Wilson, or any more? And myself, Mr. Junius Ho, Mr. Jeremy Tam. I have to draw a line here because of time constraints, and I'll be the last. So each will have 3 minutes, including questions and answers. Mr. Lam Chek Ting. Thank you, Chairman. We welcome the government to study a public transport system from the northern district to the urban areas, because the situation in the North District is already serious. We suffer frequent traffic jams, and the railway has a very high patronage. It's almost, it's very saturated. And with Northwest NT development and other new NDAs in the North District, there will be another 200,000 population here. So I urge the administration to carry out this study on an express heavy rail link, or rather mass transport link from the North District to the urban areas. Looking at this plan, at ELM Mui Wo, there will be a corridor. Please remember that for the northern part you can have development, the southern part of Lantau should be for conservation. If you have a road to Mui Wo, will bet against the current policy of conserving the south of Lantau. This may be the last meeting of this panel. Mr. Yao Shing-mo promised that there will be XLL plan submitted to us before the end of this term, but we have only 2 more weeks to go before this term ends. I'd like to know whether this government has decided not to give us any proposal on co-location arrangements of the XLL, leaving this time bomb to the next administration. Under Secretary, please. Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your support for this study. Asking us to start as soon as possible has reflected the situation of the North District, and in fact, the future developments there will also generate new demand. The study will cover 2 parts. First, not to take into account the 2 SGAs, strategic growth areas, and will also address the bottleneck of the current transport corridors. And for the second scenario, we assume that we have the 2 SGAs, what should be the new blueprint, and there will be new development along the northern part of Lantau reclamation. We have to wait until Planning Department has completed the 2030 plus study, and I can only carry out this part of the study when we have new data from the Plan D. And what about co-location arrangements of XLL? Have you got anything to add? For co-location arrangements, we said and we hope that we can submit some proposals within this term of government. But at this stage, I have no further things to add. Mr. Gary Chen, 2 points, Chairman. First, on the North District. Although the northern link will be done, but I think so far we have not seen anything concrete. I hope that the administration can expedite this work, because there will be 200,000 more population in the northern district. Currently, the railway system is U-shaped. For people traveling from northeastern part to the northwestern part of NT, people have to rely on buses. If there is a link there, it will certainly help. And then the railway system to the urban areas is overloaded. The T routes in the North District is very popular. There should be more resources and policy support for this. And the 2 MTR stations, Shenzhen and Faneng, are already too congested. If you rely on these 2 stations for interchange in the future, this is far from desirable, because they are overburdened already. And for the science park at Taipo, there are about 9,000 residential units, and the science park has over close to 30,000 people working there. You can only rely on very infrequent buses and very congested, saturated minibuses. And you do not allow resident services to university stations, so this is very inconvenient to people working and living there. So can you consider whether a new MTR station be built at KWOK? There used to be one. There are 50,000 people living there. I think this will have sufficient patronage to support a new station. Some residents groups have written in to ask for a station to be added at KWOK. Please consider. Mr. Chen refers to the problem faced by the North District. We have not stopped our work on preparation of the North Link. We have asked a consultancy to give us the actual design, and they've already submitted the proposals to the administration. The administration is conducting an internal review to look at the actual proposal, so we have not stalled in this regard. And because of the XLL and other items and the slippage, we've really short of manpower in implementing new railways, and we have suffered some slippage in the timetable. I ask members to understand. And as for the usage of the two railways with shutting to Central Link, I think there can be some relief in these two stations. And as for the problem in Taipo, the TD understands the aspirations of the residents. To build a new station, the costs are high, and we will see how we can address the demand. When will you have the opportunity to address this aspiration? Sorry, I didn't get your question. Mr. Gary Chen talked about residents asking for a station to be built at KWOK. When are you going to respond? Yes, we've received their submission, and we will provide a written reply. Thank you, Mr. Frank Hoi-dick. To address the 2030 plus study, the government is proposing strategic studies on railways and major roads beyond 2030. But this may not be comprehensive enough. And the paper says that the TD and the Highways Department from time to time use a model to a railway development study model to conduct studies, and yet it was developed in 1997. Is more than 20 years away, and I think we've seen major changes, and the accuracy of the model is in doubt. Besides, in 1997, there were the CTS3, and we are now 2017. How can we project the traffic demand beyond 2031? Will the administration expand the current studies to a CTS4? In the last agenda item, there was a motion passed and raised by Mr. Jeremy Tam for the administration to conduct a comprehensive transport study 4. You keep telling us that you've been updating the model. I beg to differ from this view. In the last legislative term, I asked the administration to conduct CTS4. It was endorsed by the Council, but the administration refused to do that, and our studies have been done in a piecemeal manner. Since the last occasion, I have met with professional bodies and trade members and council members and retired and serving officials and friends who were involved in the last CTS. They all agree that there should be CTS4 done. You have an updated 2030 planning. So I urge the administration to carry out CTS4 to have proper planning for the coming decades. All right, you talk about upgrading the model, but that was the framework established more than 10 years ago, and I think we should go beyond that framework. Mr. Yao, I understand that Mr. Yik has been asking for this for many years, but the government has its own way of doing it. On the basis of CTS3, we have conducted studies on railway developments, and we also just completed the PTSS on the role and functioning of public transport services. Here we are updating computer data. We are for the part on trunk roads, we've already done that. We would want to update the part on railways, and the whole model is quite comprehensive. I understand that Mr. Yik thinks that that's not good enough and there are other things to address, but we are of the view that this approach can help us to tackle needs in the future. Just one more sentence. I hope the next government will have more innovative ideas. Mr. Lau, I said you have been studying the Northern Link. However, whether it be in this council or the North District, we want to see some progress. We want to have the timetable and alignment for the Northern Link. We proposed some stations. For instance, extending the Northern Link to Taku Link, Shuttlecock, and Lunbo Hui. There are more railway links serving NT West, but for NT East, you have the North-South corridor, and also the Eastern Knowledge and Technology corridor. But how are you going to address the situation in the North District? The railway system is saturated. When people want to access the urban areas, they face a saturation of the railway, and Fanning and Tolokong highways are often congested. Even with the Northern Link, you're just linking the area to Shangshui. Population has grown, and you still rely on the East Rail. That's not good enough. So, apart from the East Rail, you should build another railway in parallel, or you should construct bypass on the highways. Can you address this point, please? In answering Mr. Gary Chan's question, I already told him the progress of the Northern Link. When we've finished examining plans from the MTRCL, if we are to take forward the Northern Link, we will consult the local community. But for Northeast NT, population intake will start in 2023. If by then we still don't have the Kwun-chung station of the Northern Link, that will not do. You are waiting for the MTRCL to act. This is not a good way forward. The Northern Link will be the first among the 7 new railways we are proposing, and so we have started the preparation work. We understand that you are anxious. After we have examined MTRCL's proposals, we will consult the local community. Mr. Michael Tian, what about NT East? What will be the system for NT East? This study will tell us whether we need to have new trunk roads or new railway. So you do not have any idea yet. Therefore, we're asking for money to do that study.
Michael Tian, Under Secretary, when I saw the paper, I think I was right in praising Secretary Chung for being so committed to the field. Unfortunately, he's not here now. But this paper came as a late answer, a solution, late coming solution. In 2014, we urged for the investigation for the building of a next cross-harbour tunnel. And we've been urging for a long time. Fortunately, before the end of the present term government, you gave us actually an answer. I feel very satisfied with your proposal. Back then, when the idea of the East Lantern Metropolis, the idea was mooted by the Development Bureau, I told Paper Nos and Chen Maopo that you needed to have a tunnel and a rail link to support the future need there. But it's not enough to have the cross-harbour tunnel again. You can only address the need of the 1 million population there. But you cannot still deal with the issue of the new population in the new town areas like in Hon Hui Chi-fung and so forth, and also in Shenzhen, and also nearby areas which lack rail surface support. So there's been the suggestion for a railway line serving the Chunwan area. The Chunwan link actually is so heavily congested. I've been to the Chunwan rest station in the morning. There are only tens of people who get off at each station. You brought so many people to live there, and there are so many housing estates which are going to be completed. And yet there's not enough transport support for the area. So your proposal for the Chunmun West through Thailand, Qingdongtao, Shenzhen, all the way to Leimukshu, and all the way, Leimukshu has never been served by railway service. Meifu to Lamchon to Kowloon. This is the newly proposed route. I think this is a response to the demand for a rail link to the urban area from Chunwan. So my question now is, if you have the money to do the study, and if both links are seen as technically feasible, would you put both links, or which would you give priority to? Under Secretary, I understand Mr. Tan and other members' concerns. I think for proposal, you have lots of views. I think we need to have a strategic study on the overall framework to see what the future needs will be and what should be the major routaways. On that basis, if we see any room for possible routes, it could be more than one. Only when we know what are the possible routes can we take forward our work. At this stage, I can't tell you whether there will only be one choice or what. We need to do the study first before giving more details. Yes, my point is, if it's proven, we're giving the money to do the study, right? If it's proven that there's a need for 2 or more links, would you build them for 2 links? Yeah, if it's found that there's a need. As for whether we should have 1 or 2 links or what are the possible alignments, I think we need to wait till the study is done. Only then can we know whether we are in a position to build such large-scale infrastructures. They are involved in a large amount of public money. Then it's KWOK next. Transport links to new territories, northwest and northeast. I think we need to do the study, of course. But what's ridiculous is the government for the 2030 study, particularly the East Lantern Metropolis. You have singled out East Lantern Metropolis, but we haven't yet reached a consensus on that. We never agreed to creating the ELM yet. It's talking about, at a cost, building ELM at a cost of billions of dollars. Since the handover, we've spent more than $300 billion on white elephant projects. So why is the government carrying out the study without the consensus on the ELM? And also in your paper, whether it's through KWOK or Twin Moon, many of the routes will take people to Shenzhen and Shanghai. Is it sort of tied in with the government's push for the Big Bay Area? Are they white elephant linkage works that take people to Shanghai, Zhuhai, Macau? We talk about some sort of political connectivity projects. And the Secretary, I know you won't be in the position for more than a month. When have we reached a consensus on the 2030 plan? Why are we doing the study before a consensus has been reached? What kind of policy is it, Under Secretary? I think Mr. Kwok's accusations are not founded. Sorry, please let the Under Secretary to respond. I don't want him to take up any time. When have we reached a consensus on 2030? Sorry, we haven't spent $300 billion on white elephant projects. Do you want me to do the calculations for you? Well, in this paper, we never made any proposals that would provide linkages to the mainland, except the existing ones. The Hong Kong-Macau Joint Bridge is already under construction. So nothing new is proposed in the paper which would link people to the mainland. And also for the ELM, as I said in the beginning, we are going to do the study in two scenarios. One is in the absence of ELM. Okay, what should be the transport infrastructure? And also, when there are the two SGAs, then what should the provision be like? So, sorry, my time is almost up. I need to stop him. When can the government act in such a way, carrying out study without consultation and consensus? Talking about Chung-hung development, you said that you will only build the rails after money has been approved for the reclamation work. You gave the establishment camp 4 minutes, so sorry, our time is limited. Why didn't you stop Michael Tan? Well, if you keep blaming, you need to give him time to answer. Can you let him answer first? Quickly, Under Secretary. The 2030 plus study will be finished next year. As for it will confirm the layout by then. So you said that, well, we are saying that we have the option. We're just looking at the options. Next one, Chen Chi-chen. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on Kwok-ki's points. In our paper, paragraph 12 and 13, it said clearly that based on the 2030 plus planning study on the two strategic areas, as the ELM and NTN, there will be a strategic study on major rail links. But I found it strange. Before you proposed the planning for ELM and NTN, you should have done a transport feasibility study first, because whether we support a strategic growth area is all dependent on whether there's enough transport support for it. But now we're doing it the other way around. It's like this is already a done situation. Like East Lantau development has already been approved, and you're asking us for money. So if the study finds that it won't work, then can we overturn your planning or your regional idea? The Undersecretary said that you are going to do the studies under two scenarios. That in that case, can you ask us for separate fundings? That in paragraph 12, it says that because of the 2030 plus study, and you will actually, based on the recommendations, and do the study. Now, there are $29 million that is reserved for the main routes for ELM. So can you divide your funding request into two? One for ELM and NTN, and one for non-ELM and NTN. You are doing study in parallel, but I can support your study for infrastructure in the absence of ELM and NTM. Under Secretary, let me clarify here. In doing the study, particularly if it involves 2030 plus, planning-wise, we need to first of all confirm whether there will be new spots where there will be population growths. That is, whether there will be a strategic growth area to be established. If so, then we must consider what should be the transport infrastructure to cope with that. So it's explained clearly in the paper that for 2030 plus, the new area associated with it, the development area, we need to wait till the planning department has confirmed its plan, and then we'll act on the basis of the plan and see what sort of transport layout should be provided. Well, they're talking about finishing their own study next year. So I think if we apply for the funding now and invite tenders, it takes time to do the tendering. So it will be, that's why there's some sort of overlapping in the time frame. Chairman, he has to answer my question. My question was, can we divide the funding request so that we can vote separately? So maybe I ask the Highways Department to explain why it's better to combine the two. Yeah, Highways Department. Mr. Chen, we think that part of the study would cover the need without the ELM and NTN, and yet we need to also look at, when the planning department has the results for its 2030 plus study, and we need to see the impact of that. Otherwise, we'll have proposals which are in isolation from proposals for 2030 plus. So if we do part of it first, then it will be difficult to get a separate study to support the previous one. If we carry out study without reference to the strategic growth areas, then it will be very difficult to add new items later on to it or expand it later on. Okay, Wai-keung. Okay, if you want to do an assessment study, that's fine. But in paragraph 6 of the paper, you said that in peak hours, the West Rail link from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. at the busy stations of West Rail line, the trains just slightly congested. I find it very annoying. In fact, it's not slightly congested because in the morning peak hours, people cannot get on board a train after waiting several rounds. And also, you're saying that 6 people are expected to be standing on a per square meter basis, and you're saying that you could increase resources to reduce the number to 4. But at the same time, your other assessment says that the trains are not really congested. So your assessment, that sort of assessment would make people who are in congested trains in the morning, peak hours, very angry. The reality is many trains are really heavily congested during the morning peak hours. So you can't say that it's just slightly congested and you can, for West Rail line, and you need not actually got a quick solution. But I think the Secretary, please pick any morning. Why don't you go on the West Rail line and experience how it's like to be standing in an environment of 6 people, having 6 people standing per square meter. For people taking the West Rail line, even for the Tuen Mun South extension line and other feasibility study. And the Secretary, can you tell us what you think of the feasibility studies needed?
And the Secretary, yes, we note what Mr. Wai-keung has pointed out. In 2015, we did a rather detailed study on the traffic infrastructure in Northwest NT. We talked about the situation in WRL, and the paper was quite detailed on how to address the issues. And that included addition of compartments, and secondly, when the signal system has improved, we can enhance the headway. So in the short, medium, and short term, we'll be able to improve the situation. And in the longer term, you have not. Now, please do not speak at the same time. So, is it possible to have extra cars all along the railway? And I think these questions have been answered in the past. We're gradually increasing our train compartments. Of course, that is not yet completed. We'll continue to do so. And for frequency, that can also be increased. We're planning to do that. So there is room for improvement. In the long term, we do envisage that it would be insufficient, and therefore we have this suggestion. Mr. Wilson, or Chairman, I can sum up these studies in one sentence: is better late than never, because if we don't even do these studies, the situation will go from bad to worse. And East Kowloon is very concerned about the East Kowloon link. It is already in the RDS. I'd like to know when, what is the latest situation of the East Kowloon line? At what stage are you at? And what is the timetable and the roadmap for building East Kowloon line? Because the population of Kowloon East keeps growing. Kwun-chung, Wong Tai Sin, and now I think we have over 1 million people living there, and there will be even 200,000 more. So your traffic strategy is using railway as the backbone, but this is not really acceptable. Even with no train breakdown, our railway there cannot cope with the population. So what is the progress of the East Kowloon line? And I think you should build a railway to serve the biggest number of residents. You should make use of the railway to benefit as many people as possible. I've been proposing this to the Bureau many times. First, there should be a link from Lam Tin, Yau Tong to North Point. This will be very effective in serving the needs of the over 100,000 people living in Lam Tin and in Yau Tong respectively. And then at Po Lam, you can extend the railway to the Hong Kong UST. We have a motion to propose later, but I have to raise these 2 points. And in addition to railway development, you should also look at the capacity of railway stations. The stations along the Kwun-chung line is such that, now we have done a survey, the Kwun-chung platform and the concourse are very congested. I hope you can look at the capacity of stations as well. And I'll leave time for the Undersecretary to tell us what is the status of the East Kowloon line. Thank you, Mr. Oh, for your questions and views. East Kowloon line will be among the first railway state projects we are going to implement. So MTRCL is is working on a concrete plan for us, and we urge it to do it quickly. I think Mr. Wilson has already reflected your views to the Highways Department, and they will consider that. And as for the congested situation of stations along Kwun-chung line, we don't have to wait for these 2 studies to tackle them. The MTRCL has the responsibility to address the capacity of these stations ASAP. All right, please refer this question to the MTRCL. Dr. Junius Ho, you're asking for over $90 million for the studies, and payment will be done in 4 years. Now, $33 million will be on SGAs, and $24 million again on the SGS-related railways. And the major road sections, $20 million on, again, the SGAs. Most of the studies are related to ELM and NTN. For 2030 plus, you have not come to a conclusion, although you have done public consultation. And this study is very much ELM focused. And Mr. Wilson all asked about what is going to happen to the railway of Kowloon East. I am a bit lost. If we have previous reports, can you let us have a quick summary of these studies? And we know what areas were covered in the past, and here we will focus on ELM, and I think it is reasonable for the study to last for years. Now, even for Tuen Mun West Bypass, we've heard of it for many years, and it is moving ahead very slowly. So let us have a comprehensive understanding of all the associated studies. Railways in Hong Kong, among the most expensive in the world, is close to $5 million per meter. Whereas for the Kenya one, built by the mainland is $58,000 per meter squared. In Hong Kong, either the soil conditions are too soft or too hard, or neither too soft nor too hard. They're expensive all the same. The mainland is most experienced in the construction of railways. Perhaps you should consult them. Please do not just ask AECOM and over an Arab to do it. The mainland is so experienced in building railways. Perhaps there is things to learn from the experience, so that we can have railways that are cheap, and efficient, and of quality. In RDS 2040, we decided on 4 railway networks. They will be implemented anyway. So, and they are not within the scope of the 2 studies here. For this 2 studies, we focus on the time frame beyond 2031. We do have priorities in implementing railways, and if Dr. Ho would like to have a comprehensive picture, we will give a paper afterwards. It will be best if we can have a list. I can see it in Plan 2. Whenever you talked about the situation beyond 2031, please, by way of background, let us know what has been decided before that date. Mr. Jeremy Tam. Yes, I really concur with the wish of Mr. Frankie Yik when it comes to the CTS4. I moved a motion on that last time. I mean, at the last agenda item, and now I receive a motion from Mr. Yik on a similar issue. So many of us share the same view. You can't say that the report was completed in 1997, and the report has been is still valid, and the major points are still the same. I think that is not the point. Why do we need a large-scale CTS again? Because as technology advances, we should make use of new technologies such as big data and sharing economy. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about Uber. For instance, we can have carpooling using apps, and we can share the fuel costs. Now, carpool is not something new. It's just that we can make use of new data and electronic means to do that. And you talked about the RDS 2014 and also CTS3. You do things in a piecemeal manner. And I agree that these studies will focus on ELM, as said by some members. ELM, we're still undecided as to how ELM should proceed. So either you delay the studies a little bit to wait for the ELM to be finalized. Whether we support or reject it, you wait for a while, because you have to take into account how you should proceed if ELM is not implemented. Under Secretary, whether we need CTS4, we have the view that for CTS3 we start from the railway and then to a road, and we update our model, and we are doing it gradually. And this is the approach adopted by this administration. As explained by the Highways Department, we believe both should be done. Hang on, I have to extend our meeting by 5 minutes. I think there are merits to this approach. The Highways Department, when commissioning this consultancy, will ask for different scenarios with and without the two SGAs, so efforts will not be futile. It's my turn. Traffic studies, developments beyond 2030, cross-boundary railway, so on and so forth. I think it is rather unreasonable or irrational for people to oppose everything even before they have read the paper, because anti-North is subject to high population growth. Now we have a proposed alignment from DAB. Of course, we will not oppose proposed alignment from other members. There is the Yunchun tunnel, but if it will only reach Chunwan, it's not efficient enough. We want it to be extended to cover East Chunwan and then northeastern part of Kwun-chung, and then it can link up with Tai Wai and to Kowloon East, and other link or extension is to Wai-keung and along the container terminals, and then to the eastern and western part of Tsingyi and Kao-yi-chao. I think this is a new way out for Tuen-mun-yuen-long link. In 2010, the proposal was vetoed by the administration. That's regrettable. Still, I think we can still revive it if we want to. And for Northwest NT, in particular, has seen increasingly consistent population growth. There can be from Tuen-mun east to Lantau. It will go through Sunny Bay, Discovery Bay, or it can go to Chung-hung and Kao-yi-chao. These are welcome. So long as we have a few more railway links, then people in NT West will see some relief. Why should it be from Wai-keung to Yanhou? Because there will be Route 11. Route 11 should be developed together with a new railway link so that the whole thing can start ASAP. If it is from Tuen-mun West and to the sea and to Chung-hung, we have no objection to that anyway. We support the government's decision to revisit the railway network for Kowloon West. So any response from you, Under Secretary?
Thank you, DAB, you for giving us the suggestions. I think in our study, we will make reference to all sorts of views. I believe that what you proposed reflects the demands in different locations and regions. As for the future alignments, well, we will carry out the engineering feasibility works first. Thank you. All along, we've got 5 motions to deal with because of limited time. I would like to, deal with these motions next time. At the next meeting, if members on your motions, if you want to make amendments, I would let you amend them. You can extend this meeting by 15 minutes to deal with motions. Well, we don't have a quorum. We may not have a quorum because we need to have a quorum. I think a large number of members are now attending a lunch meeting. We will deal with the motions next time. Because there are 5 motions, if we have to read them out, it takes time. So you haven't decided on the day for the next meeting. It will be on 21st, July 21st. Yes, July 21st. I will be out of Hong Kong. I will need to. Do I need to withdraw my motions? Well, we don't have time. We don't have a quorum now, and we can't deal with it today. Can we just ask them to come? We don't have a quorum. You can see how many people are present now. If you call them to come back, I'm sure they'll come back just to vote. Do you want to deal with the motions today? Only 5 motions. I don't know how many will be here on July 21st. If that's the case, we need to ring the bell. We ring the bell for 5 minutes. We've got 5 motions to deal with. One is moved. The first one is moved by Michael Tan. The second and third motions are moved by Debbie, and the remaining 2 are moved by Chi-fung and KWOK. If we have a quorum, then we can deal with them. If not, then we deal with them next time. If we deal with them next time, it will also allow members to, if you want to make any changes to the wordings or content, you can do them from now till the next meeting. But we won't accept any new motions. Chi-fung, as I just said, July 21st, I won't be in Hong Kong. So I will need to find someone to move the motion again. Would you accept that if I were to move new motions? Well, yeah, I will accept if you get people to move the motion for you. I need to ring the bell. Okay, I'll ring the bell for 10 minutes.
Hi. 好，明白，唔該晒。 10個，我哋14啊嘛。唔係，我哋有5個動議。一唔切啦，佢臨尾俾。
第5個係邊？
郭家麒議員。
郭家麒。
Who moved the fifth motion? It's moved by KWOK.
把燈。冇辦法咯，唔夠人嘛。好啦，由於
Because time's up and we still don't have the quorum, we cannot deal with the motions today. We'll deal with them next time at the next meeting based on what I just suggested. And this is about the funding request to FC. So thank you. And this is the last time for the Undersecretary to attend a transport panel in the present term government. So I'd like to thank the Undersecretary for all your work and support for the transport panel. I'd like to thank members for your suggestions in the past. Even though I cannot satisfy all your requests, but I think you've really proposed valuable views and get the government to do its work. Thank you.